want to speak to you on what I entitle a Kairos time. A Kairos time. A Kairos time. We have different kinds of time, like Chronos time, which is calendar time. We know what time it is right now. But a Kairos time is a moment in eternity when God steps out of eternity into time and demands that the elements and circumstances and everything that surrounds man comes into compliance and into divine alignment with judicial determinations of eternity. Is anybody hearing me? Say, I hear you. Somebody say, talk to me. I came to tell you tonight that you are in a Kairos time in this church. Something is about to break. Oh, you didn't hear what I said. You think it's great, but God is about to blow your mind. Are you hearing me, somebody? Look at somebody and say, don't be satisfied where you are. There is more beyond. Yes, there is. Sometimes we get excited with what we have and where we are, but God said, don't be excited with this. Because I'm not impressed with where you are right now. Because the real thing is ahead of you. There is something bigger and greater than what you have right now. Are you hearing me, somebody? If you turn your Bibles with me, if you please, to Genesis, the 49th chapter and the 19th verse. Genesis 49 and 19. Genesis 49 and 19. God, a troop, shall overcome him, but he shall overcome at last. Somebody say at last. Oh, talk to me. Say at last. And Genesis 49:19. God, a troop, shall overcome him, but he shall overcome at last. Come with me to the book of Mark, the 4th chapter, reading from verse 35 to the end. Mark 4:35 to the end.
Mark chapter number 4, beginning from verse 35.
Yes, sir.
And the same day, when the evening was come, he saith unto them, let us pass over unto the other side. And when they had sent away the multitude, they took him even as he was in a ship, and there were also with him other little ships. And there arose a great storm of wind, and the waves beat into the ship, so that it was now full. And he was in the hinder part of the ship asleep on a pillow. And they awoke him and say unto him, Master, carest thou not that we perish? And he arose, and he rebuked the winds, and said unto the sea, Peace, be still. And the wind ceased, and there was a great calm. And he said unto them, Why are ye so fearful? How is it that ye have no faith? And they feared exceedingly, and said one unto another, What manner of a man is this, that even the wind and the sea obey him?
Chapter 5, from verse 1 to 10.
5, beginning from verse 1. And they came over unto the other side of the sea, into the country of the Gadarenes.
Underline the word Gadarenes. Gadarenes, please. It's connected to Genesis 49:19. Gadarenes. God. Thank you. Go ahead.
And when he was come out of the ship, immediately there met him out of the tombs a man with an unclean spirit, who had his dwelling among the tombs, and no man could bind him, no, not with chains, because that he had been often bound with fetters and with chains, and the chains had been plucked asunder by him, and the fetters broken in pieces, neither could any man tame him. And always night and day he was in the mountains and in the tombs, crying and cutting himself with stones. But when he saw Jesus afar off, he ran and he worshipped him. And he cried with a loud voice and said, What have I to do with thee, Jesus, thou Son of the Most High God? I adjure thee by God that thou torment me not. For he said unto him, Come out of the man, thou unclean spirit. And he asked him, what is thy name? He answered, saying, my name is Legion.
Underline the word legion.
For we are many. And he besought him much that he would not send them away out of the country.
There was something about the patriarchs, the men that walked with God, like the father of Bishop John Francis, of blessed memory, men that walked with God, men that walked with God, and were close with God. Before they passed, they had the ability to gather their children together and to predict their future by a prophetic eye and by a prophetic ear. And under a prophetic inspiration and under a prophetic breath, they could literally see into the DNA and the genes of their bloodline, and they could tell and predict events of hundreds and of thousands of years to come. And if you look at Genesis 49 carefully, you realize that the patriarch called to his children or his sons together. He said, gather yourselves together, that I may tell you what will befall you in the end time. In the end time. How many of you believe that we live in the end times like never before? And so what Jacob was dealing with was not issues immediately. It wasn't issues of his time, nor issues of the sons of their time. He was predicting, he was dealing with matters of generations to come, generations yet unborn, issues of thousands of years that were yet to be unfolded by a prophetic eye. And things came up on his prophetic radar that he could pick things up to predict things under the inspiration of God that no man had ability to do likewise. He blessed every one of them, predicted the future of every one of them, came to Reuben and said, Reuben, thou art my firstborn, the excellency of dignity, the beginning of my strength, power, and of might. Unstable as water, thou shalt not excel. And the word thou shalt not excel means it doesn't matter how much you try. You have double portion of the blessing. As a son, you have a blessing. That is a portion. And as a firstborn, it gives you another portion. So you have double portion of the blessing. But I'm going to disinherit you of the double blessings. And I'm going to give it to the sons of Joseph, Ephraim and Manasseh. And then he literally stripped him of the birthright, took everything away from him, from the firstborn, through prophetic power and through prophetic pronouncement, without any legal document being signed, by his words, under the unction of the prophetic, could literalize, disinherit his firstborn. And when Moses was blessing the sons of Jacob, when it came to Reuben, he could not touch it. He could not touch the issue of Reuben. And the reason was because Jacob was a higher spiritual ranking officer compared to Moses. Moses was of a lower spiritual rank. You remember when he went to the burning bush and he met God and he said, who are you? He said, I am the God of your fathers. I am the God of Abraham, the God of Isaac, and of the God of Jacob. And so Moses was a son to Jacob and therefore did not have the spiritual capacity to override or to overrule the decree or the pronouncement of his father. And so he could not touch the issue of Reuben. He could not revoke the pronouncement. He could not also try to bless what Jacob has cursed. The least he could do was to petition and make intelligent supplications and atonement for Reuben by saying, oh God, let not Reuben die and let not his men be few. That was the only thing he could say. He could not touch the issue of Reuben because his father had cursed him and had not blessed him. Most times folks who come to church who have good relationship with their parents find it easy to relate to authority and leadership in church. People who have difficulties with parents and authority at home, when they come to church, that spirit follows them and it makes it difficult for them to relate to authority and to spiritual power in the house of God. But it came to one of the sons of Jacob, by the name of Gath. And when he came to Gath and he was blessing Gath, something came up on his radar. And he could see through the bloodline and the genes of Gath. And he said, I see a troop overtaking Gath, but at last he shall overcome. And that was not referring to the particular seed he was talking about at that particular time. It was a prophetic issue. He was dealing with the bloodline of Gath, that one of the seed of Gath, one of the ancestors, one of the bloodline of Gath shall be overpowered by a troop. And the word troop, translated in Greek, means legion. If you study, the word troop in the Hebrew, translated in Greek, means legion. So when he said a troop shall overcome him, he was referring to a legion. And a legion means 6,000 demon spirits, 3,000 footmen, and 3,000 horsemen. So that he was embedded with 6,000 unclean spirits. And he said, a troop shall overcome Gath, but at last he shall overcome. And what makes this a very serious situation, ladies and gentlemen, is because under the Old Testament, they did not have power to cast out devils. That's why they stoned witches. They killed them, because they didn't have the power to cast them out. It was only under the ministry of Jesus, under the New Testament, that Jesus introduced the power to expel and to drive out evil spirit. And therefore, until Jesus came on the scene, there was no way this particular seed of Jacob could be free from the troop or the legions. There was no way. The high priest, the Sadducees, the scribes, the Jews, nobody could free him but Jesus. It was a very serious situation. If he did not live in the days of Jesus, he would have died and gone to his grave with those spirits, controlling his life to the day he died. But Jacob could see through the bloodline, an event that will happen to one of his seed. The Bible said Levite paid tithe to Melchizedek in the loins of his grandfather Abraham. And Levite was fourth generation, but in the loins of his grandfather, he paid tithe to Melchizedek before he was born. Now, before Jacob died, Jacob knew prophetically that the promise of God was tied to the promised land. That God's promise to the children of Israel was tied to a geographical location. And therefore he said to them, when you are leaving the land, take my bones with you. He said, when the deliverer comes and you are leaving, don't leave my bones to lay in the tombs of Egypt. Because the promise is not connected to the land of Egypt. It's connected to Canaan, the promised land. So take my bones to the land of promise. Ladies and gentlemen, according to the New Testament, the Bible said that when Jesus died, on the third day when he resurrected, all the Old Testament saints who died and were buried in the land of promise rose. They came out of their graves. Now what you got to understand was, if the bones of Joseph had remained in Egypt, there was no way Joseph could have joined in the first resurrection. His bones would have still been in Egypt up to today. So what you got to understand here was, Joseph had to make a decision while he was alive by telling the elders to take his bones with them, because he could see prophetically that there was coming a moment in time and in history when the Messiah will come and die and will rise on the third day, and everyone that was buried in the land of promise that served God will come out of their grave. And Joseph said, I don't want to miss that event. It's a glorious moment I don't want to miss. Take my bones with you. Jesus had come on the scene at this time. He was ministering to the multitudes on the other side of Jordan. This man in the land of the Gadarenes lived at one side of the Jordan, which was in where the Jews dwelled. There were heathens that dwelled on this side of the Jordan. If you study the scriptures carefully, when the children of Israel were crossing over to the other side of the promised land, among the tribes that remained on this side of Jordan was the tribe of Gad. And in the days of David, they called them the Gadites. The Bible called them the Gadites. And the Bible said the Gadites were men whose faces were like faces of lions. And the Bible said they were skillful in battle, that they could fight with both left and right hand. Now these Gadites were part of the seed of Jacob, and they dwell on the other side of Jordan. Now Jesus had come and was ministering at the other side of Jordan to multitudes, thousands, the whole township and cities and village gathered. And there were unprecedented miracles and moves of God. Great things were happening. And Jesus, in the midst of the ministration, received an email from heaven. And he logged in and downloaded from the mind of God what God had on his mind. And the message was, it is time. This is a Kairos moment. This is the appointed time. This is the fullness of time. This is the due season to free one of the seed of Jacob. So leave the multitudes, cross over to the other side of Jordan. I have an appointment for you. It's a Kairos time. Is anybody hearing me? I'll get you. So Jesus, I'm working it. So Jesus crossed over to go to the other side. These, ladies and gentlemen, demons were so powerful. If anybody tells you, I have problems with folks who stand and say, I dare you, Satan. You don't understand what you're dealing with. You got to be well informed to know what you're dealing with. Satan is not a demon, he's a fallen archangel. That is different from a demon. While Jesus was going to the other side to set this man free, the demons in him were so strong and powerful that by familiar spirits and demonic intuitions, they could tell that the man's deliverance was at hand. They knew that it was his Kairos moment. They knew that eternity had stepped into time to set this man free. They knew that at last it was time for him to overcome, and they would not let him go. So what they did was to employ the elements. They employed the wind, the sea, they troubled the waters, and the attempt and the motive was to drown the boat, the means of transportation that was bringing the man's deliverance to town. They said, let's stop whoever this guy is coming to town to set him free. Let's drown him before he gets to shore, that he will never get to shore. But they were joking. They were joking because they were dealing with he that holds the universe by the word of his power. Are you hearing me, somebody? When God said, let there be light in the beginning, and there was light, that light was Jesus. That light was the word. That's why the Bible said, for there was a man sent from God to bear witness of the light, and he was in the light, John the Baptist. And the Bible said, this is the light that lighted every man that cometh into the world. Then Jesus came and said, I am the light of the world. When he said, I am the light of the world, he was referring to Genesis. He had always been the light of the world. And so the devil was joking. He was joking with something that was too hot for him. He couldn't handle it. Jesus was asleep in the midst of storm because he had advanced knowledge. Are you hearing me, somebody? He already was at the other side of Jordan and have set the man free already. And so the sea was troubled. The wind was contrary. And Peter was a skillful fisherman. Very experienced. This time around, he saw the sea and the wind, and he said, no, this is demonic. So he cried for fear and said, Master, carest thou not that we perish? And the Bible said that the master rose and he looked at the sea and the wind and said, how dare you? How dare you intimidate my disciple? Where were you in the beginning when I said, let there be light, and there was light? Where were you when I commanded the waters to gather at one place and put a decree that the waters will not cross over? Where were you? Peace, be still. And the Bible said that the sea was slain and the wind held his peace. And immediately they arrived at the other side. Remember the word. In the days of David, they called this particular part of Jordan the land of the Gadites. In the days of Jesus, they called it the land of the Gadarenes. This was named after one of the seed and sons of Jacob. And the Bible said that this man had his dwellings in the tombs. He lived in the graveyards, in the mountain places, never came to town. He was uncontrollable. Nobody could touch him. Nobody could handle him. But on this particular day, because the prophetic word had gone forth into the atmosphere, because the prophetic word was out there, the prophetic word influenced and compelled him to leave the place of his dwelling to the shore. The prophetic word also compelled Jesus to give up what he was doing to come to the other side for prophecy to be fulfilled. Are you hearing me, somebody? The wind could not handle it. The element could not stop it because the prophetic word was in the atmosphere. Are you hearing me, somebody? The Bible said he got to the shore, and for the first time, this man was not in the tomb. He wasn't in the mountain area. He came just where his deliverance was coming from. He didn't go to the airport. He didn't go to the train station. He didn't go to the bus station. Are you hearing me, somebody? He didn't go to the highway because his deliverance was not coming from Heathrow Airport or Gatwick Airport or Terminal 1, 2, 3, or 4. He knew exactly where the deliverance was coming from. The prophetic word made sure that he was at the right place where the deliverance was coming from. And the Bible said when Jesus stepped out of the boat, the first man that he met was this man. He had to be there. I want you to know that you are not here because you were invited. You didn't come because Bishop preached some great message. You didn't come to hear me. You are here because you were subpoenaed by eternity. Are you hearing me, somebody? You had no choice. You had to be here. Are you hearing me, somebody? You were summoned by destiny to be here because you have an appointment with destiny, an appointment with eternity. Lift up your hands and shout, yeah. I'm working it. Jesus, for you to understand and appreciate that this guy wasn't a heathen. He wasn't a heathen. He was one of the seed of Jacob. He was one of the lost sheep of the house of Israel. Now remember that Jesus' mandate was to the lost sheep of the house of Israel. It wasn't to the Gentiles. You remember the woman of Canaan when she came to Jesus and said, my daughter is vexed with an unclean spirit and I need some help from you. And Jesus said, I can't help you. Jesus said, you are a dog, you are unclean. Jesus said, my mandate don't allow me to help you. The only way I can help you is for the blood to be shed. You got to wait till I go to the cross. The woman said, you don't understand. That is the only baby I have. That is my life, my well. I can't go back to the labor ward. I can't have any child anymore. Everything that makes it possible for a woman to have a baby has been removed. This is my only chance I have. I can't lose this child, and I can't wait for you to die and go to the cross and resurrect. I got to have this miracle, and I must have it now. Are you hearing me, somebody? Jesus called the old man up there. He said, Father, I have a situation here. She is not part of the lordship of the house of Israel. She can only come in after the cross. But she has this faith. She has an attitude. She will not quit or give up. She is desperate that I can't deny her. What do I do? And the father said, if she is desperate to the point where she can't be denied, give it to the woman. And Jesus' mandate, God has to utter his mandate and job description to bring this woman in before the cross.